Okay, he knows the supplier of more than enough. And he knows the supplier of more than enough is the one who ordains marriage. He's pleased with marriage when we do it the right way. And so if he wants to bless marriages that he's ordained, of course, he's going to make even the marriage abundant and prosperous because it is going to give him glory because he ordained it, right? He brought the two together. And when when he has when he has a person in mind for you, he has a purpose for that person being with you. And if you become accustomed to, I want to call it the world system, in these days, it's kind of like the PR system, PR relationships, commerce covenants. But when you come accustomed to the world system and you deflect from what God wants for you, then you not almost you give a pass for seducing spirits to come into even your covenant in that manner because you went against the grain of what God wanted for your covenant. We see often, and I'm once again not trying to attack anyone because I love everyone, but in the beginning, even marriages were, of course, to procreate, and there's only way that procreation can come. It takes a man and a woman. So naturally, marriage was supposed to be just that. We saw what happened, when Lot had the visitation from, I believe it was Lot, visitation from the angels that came, and the men of a city, saw them come in, and it's like they were trying and trying and trying to get and bust down a door, and the angel struck them, with blindness. It's because of what was in their heart. These are men trying to get men. So naturally it was going against, and that's not necessarily marriage, but you see what I'm saying. Um, Seducing spirits, deceitful spirits. Um, want to go into a few more verses because they tie into this. Not First Corinthians, Second Corinthians 10 and verse 5. Casting imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringeth into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. And this is the King James Version. Casting imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God. And if something is exalting itself against the knowledge of God, we know who that's from. That's from that fool. That's why he got kicked out in the first place. Who are you? you know? So we know where that comes from. And that ties into a seducing spirit. Uh, Romans 8 and 6. Once again, the King James Version. Um, For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. And to be carnally minded, and it doesn't mean that we can't be Christian and carnally minded. And I think it was Apostle Leroy Thompson who was just speaking about that as well. Be some carnally minded Christians. And that's when you just have your mind on other things. God doesn't completely have your mind. And when He doesn't completely have your mind, once again, it's easy for that fool to use who he uses to finagle themselves into your mind and speak, especially if you're around people who are just carnally minded. And if they have that in them, to the depth of to where it's almost like a lifestyle for them, and they're speaking into you. What do you think is going to get into you? Proverbs 10, verse 9. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. You know, that speaks for itself. And if you go the wrong direction, you're definitely going to be found out. There's so many verses in the Bible that talk about, being exposed and God vindicating and things of that nature. And he's not playing. And this is a time where it's really coming into manifestation. Romans 12 and verse 2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So you will know what the will is for your relationship. You will know what the will is of God, the will of God for your marriage, and it won't be something that the world has told you needs to take place. Someone and I were joking about that when I just made the statement about commerce covenants. And I spoke about this several weeks ago about PR relationships. Don't know where that kind of came from, but it was dropped in my spirit, and like I said, it was several weeks ago. But PR relationships, when people on the outside tend to put people together because, he looks the part, she looks the part, he may be wealthy, she may be wealthy, and they put it together, put people together, or whatever the case may be. And, of course, in some eyes it may make sense, and in some cases it may make sense. But if it's not the will of God, no matter how much sense it makes to the world, it can easily become disintegrated because it wasn't the will of God. That means nothing to him, especially if it has nothing to do with the purpose that he brought people together for. It could be a good match on earth, but not a good match for the will that he is trying to, not trying to, but for the will that he has for it, the purpose that he has for each person. And it's really taking away from other people who are supposed to be in their lives. It could be something that is more in depth than a money situation that he is trying to do, that he is trying to get glory for in the world. So that's interfering in the God thing, and that's definitely a no-no. So John 8:44. I thought that was 14. John chapter 8, verse 44. You are your father. You are, of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and has nothing to do with the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Just as seducing spirits, they speak lies and they make them sound believable. They speak lies and make them sound as though they are appealing to masses, of course, appealing to you, appealing for whatever the situation may be. Look at what happened with Samson and Delilah. What happened with the serpent and Eve? Was it? I can't remember who I was listening to who was just talking about that with Eve. Like, Eve was already like God, but the serpent told her, like, if you do this, God knows that you will be like him. It's like he beguiled her, and she was ignorant to what was going on. It was a seducing spirit, and she was seduced. And then she gave to her husband, and he fell prey to it. And it just messed everything up.